I needed this book as the 10-year-old boy who was shown porn for the first time long before his body or mind was ready for it. Ooh. Likely paving new neural pathways, linking images of naked women to happiness and false feelings of self-worth. Images that he would later use to attempt to fill voids in his life. Voids that, when he was not aroused in the moment of using porn, would be replaced by shame. I needed this book as the 18-year-old freshman in college who felt the need to prove his masculinity by hooking up with as many girls as he could without any regard for their feelings or attachments in the process. And at the 22-year-old who didn't know how to say he wasn't emotionally ready to have sex for the first time. And at the 25-year-old man who was heartbroken and so financially broke that even if he could have afforded to eat for that month after he learned he was cheated on, he wouldn't have. And I needed it at the 29-year-old who had finally found the love of his life, staged one of the most elaborate proposals of all time, and then also found himself having cold feet for no other reason than what society was telling him would happen to him once he got married. And I go on and on and on up until me now, who's 37.
Hey, Better Together with Maria Menounos fans. Yeah, that's right. It's not Maria Menounos. It's Mr. Maria Menounos. Kevin Undergaro sitting in for my beautiful and lovely and talented wife. Very exciting show today. Super exciting for me and kind of a little selfish. I really wanted this interview for me more than my wife, although it's a friend of my wife's, but something that really hits home with me, and I think will hit home for our males, but also our females to help better understand us. We're going to be with Justin Baldoni talking about his new book, Man Enough. And I'm going to open with a quote, Kelsey.
Yes, please do.
Another one, these like power quotes, just always, it's that punch to the stomach.
I know.
It's that knee to the groin. Just for me, it makes me go, ooh, but in a good way.
Yeah.
If there is a good way. Okay, boys grow into men, yes. But in some ways, we always feel ourselves to be on that playground. Always feel afraid someone is going to call us weak and not man enough. Ooh, okay. We craft our armor against it like medieval knights. But if you've ever tried on one of those chainmail suits of armor, you know that not only are they so heavy and confining, you can barely walk, but they also end up cutting us off from the outside world and completely preventing true, intimate connection to others. Oh my goodness. If you're a guy, you understand that. I think if you're a girl, you understand that too. Okay, a little bit about our friend here. Justin Baldoni is an American actor, filmmaker, director, and author. And by the way, I want to say that was a quote from Justin Baldoni.
Yes.
I left that out here. So I'm trying to rush this thing along to get to Justin.
We're so excited.
Right? Among so many ventures, Justin starred in CW's Jane the Virgin and created the documentary series Last Days, chronicling people in their final days of life. However, to call Justin an actor, filmmaker, director, and author is not giving him full credit. Justin is a deep-thinking humanist, highly concerned with the well-being of others. While he could school us on so many subjects today, including tiny homes, he is here to talk about Man Enough, his new book on masculinity and undefining traditional roles, and it means to help us evolve and become our greatest selves. Better Together in the Heel Squad. Welcome a personal friend of Maria's, Mr. Justin Baldoni. Hey, Justin.
Wow, that was so sweet.
Well,
thank you.
Yeah, well, you, my friend, I as I read this, I'm like, this guy is highly evolved, and I was telling the girls, I go, I think he's Jesus. He even looks like him.
We agreed.
But then I say,
no, Jesus was darker than me. Let me say that.
This is true.
Yeah.
But you've had a lot of years, so you got lighter. But I was going to say that it's unfair to say to anybody because it's just too much pressure because we're all human. It's not really fair to put that on anybody. I just want to say, like, for you to be, and even the recurring themes of the films you make about people dying and passing on, and, you know, we're dealing with that right now. And I feel like in our culture, one of the things we also bury is death. In other cultures, you're born knowing you're going to die, and they know it's kind of a part of the journey, and it's on to a new world or a new thing. But here, we're always like shocked when it comes.
Yeah, here we're raised pretending like we're not going to die.
Yeah, right. So can you? I mean, by the way, Liz, I want to get into Man Enough, but for someone right now who's going through this, and I think there's a lot of people out there going through it with COVID.
Yeah.
Is there any like helpful words you can give us about, you know, the passage? Because your series documented all this, but then also like I'm noticing that recurring theme in your beautiful films. And by the way, like I really encourage people to follow Justin as a director because I think you're really on the beginning of that part of your journey as well. But Justin, tell me if you could, like from your experiences with this, what can you give us the bright side a little bit, please?
This is one of my favorite subjects. I've realized I really have a thing for talking about really uncomfortable subjects. I'll have to talk to my therapist about that at some point. But for me, look, it's got to start with faith. I was raised in the Baha'i faith. I'm a follower of the Baha'i faith. And Baha'u'llah says that I have made death a messenger of joy for thee. Wherefore dost thou grieve? And I think we have to really look at it from the big picture. And if you don't have a belief in something, of course, that's going to be terrifying because we're putting all of our eggs in this basket. We're thinking that this world is all that there is, that the material success, all the superficial stuff, that everything is about this right now, and not thinking that maybe this is just the beginning of a journey, a longer journey, that maybe we have souls. And what I can offer right now comes directly from the Baha'i writings, and I talk about this a lot. And it's to think of death like birth. In the Baha'i faith, we're told that when we're in the womb, when babies are in the womb, we are alive. We are existing. We are in a world. We are developing and growing, and we are given sustenance. We're encapsulated in this perfect universe. It's the right temperature. We're floating, and we're content. We have everything that we need in that world, but we have no free will. So everything that's happening to us is happening to us not on our own will, but on the will of our mother and God's. The mother is feeding us via her nutrition, and her choices are influencing us in our growth and development. And then we're growing these things, like eyesight, like skin, lungs so that we can breathe, noses so that we can smell, tongues so that we can taste. We're growing our brains so that we can think. But we don't need these things for that world. We don't need any of the things that we're developing in the womb for the womb. We need them for where we're going next. But in the womb, we have no idea where we're going next because we're completely content, and we have no frame of reference to understand or comprehend that an entire world exists outside of the womb. However, as we know scientifically, 2 inches away on the other side is this unbelievable universe where suddenly we will need everything that we're developing, but we don't even know we're developing. So one day we die of the womb in an uncomfortable process. We go through a dark tunnel, and on the other end, we're born into light. And suddenly we need all of the things that we were developing in the womb. We need our eyesight because there's light now, right? There's photons and electrons, there's smells. But you could have never told the baby in the womb that just a couple inches away existed this vast universe, that we were going to be, that the baby was on a floating rock in the middle of a universe that was orbiting a sun, that there are stars in the galaxy, that there's oxygen, that you'll need to be able to breathe. You're going to have legs so that you can walk because there's ground. You're going to be able to eat food because you're going to have a stomach that digests. You could have never told the baby those things. Then you're born into this world and you need everything that you were spending those 9-10 months developing. And what we're told is that just an inch away, right here, in fact, but we don't have the ability to see it, is where we're going next. And where we're going next, we're going to need a different set of things. The spiritual versions of our arms and our legs and our eyes and our ears. And those things can only be developed while we're here on our own accord, because we have free will to develop those things. And how do we develop those spiritual things? Through tests and through tribulations. We develop those things when we're put through the spiritual gym, when we're put in situations that frustrate us or make us angry, that are uncomfortable. What are those things? Trustworthiness, love, kindness, steadfastness, forbearance, peace, justice, right? You go on and on and on. Kindness. All of these things are the qualities that we're going to need where we are going.
On the other side. So then, Justin,
we don't have the ability to comprehend that yet because we're finite beings.
Right. So what about the people that didn't subscribe to those things you just mentioned in this lifetime?
Question. So the one thing that we're told in the Baha'i faith is that God is a just and loving God. He's the all forgiving, to the point where we don't even have the ability to comprehend the love and the forgiveness and the justness. We're also told that we only take with us the good. We only take with us the good qualities. And if you think about darkness as an example, scientifically, darkness is simply an absence of light, like the lack of photons. So there is no such thing as darkness, which means that there is no such thing as evil, as bad qualities. There's simply a lack of good qualities. So you always bring the good with you. And what we're told is that our souls are going to be always progressing in the worlds of God and like closer to God, similar to like us getting closer to the sun, wanting to be closer to that heat, that light. And there will always be opportunities to progress. But this is just literally the beginning of our journey of the soul. And if you want to, this is the part that might be something that's helpful for you and Maria and what you guys are experiencing. So we're also told in our faith that just like we were able to communicate with the baby in the womb, just like we were able to talk to your children in the womb, and we know scientifically that a baby that's born can understand the language and the voice of the mother. It reacts to the language and the voice of the mother at birth because it's heard it the entire time. So we're told that you can influence the baby. That's why we play classical music for babies and play music for the babies, right? We believe that where we're going next, they can influence us in positive ways as well. Not in negative ways, in positive ways. And just like we could talk to our children, they can talk to us and they pull strings for us and they influence us. So when somebody passes on, we can still communicate with them via our prayers through acts of love and service, but they actually their prayers mean more to us there than they do here. So oftentimes you notice things or think of things or get inspired by something or see something that reminds you of that person. And I would argue that that is that person showing up in your life, opening doors for you that maybe you wouldn't have seen, giving you, whispering in your ear when you're not aware, causing you to turn left instead of right, influencing our lives in positive ways because they're here. We just can't see them.
And Justin, do you feel as though when they're close to the end, they're almost in the tunnel? They're halfway between both worlds. Have you noticed that?
Yeah, I have. I actually have. I believe that, and again, this is just from my personal experiences,
right?
Being with folks as they pass, and also from a lot of from my own research and a lot of friends. And I have a obsession with near-death experiences and NDEs, and I like to look at all of that stuff. And what I kind of believe happens is that there's this balance where as the physical body starts to die, and as the organs start to shut down, and as our brain starts to kind of lose its strength on us, then I kind of think of the brain like the governor. I actually think the reason we can only use 10% of our brain is because the brain is the thing that's actually stopping us from being able to see and communicate with what's existing outside of us. That's not in the faith, that's just my faith.
And Justin, we hear that a lot from a lot of the experts we have here, even the scientists say just what you just said.
Yeah. So I feel like the brain is the thing. It's the governor that keeps us from being able to experience that world. And Baha'u'llah actually says that if we were able to experience the next world, we would never want to be here. Why would we want to be here in this painful, terrible place at times when we could be there? Right? It's like asking us, would you ever want to go back into the womb? No, because we're told that the next world is as different to this world as this world is to the womb. So I think that the brain kind of stops us. And I think that as the body starts shutting down, as the brain starts shutting down, we're able to kind of be in both worlds. And I think that's when, you could say scientifically, they say that, the part of the brain is activated, and that's why they're seeing people that have passed on.
They're having illusions. I don't believe that.
But I've also had firsthand experiences with people that have had near-death experiences where they've been scientifically dead, and yet they've been able to recall everything that was said in that room while they were dead, and they had zero brain activity. And there's fantastic books about this. But I'm fascinated by it. And so, yes, I believe that there's a combination of the scientific and the spiritual, and that, they're kind of they're in the in-between. And when they're ready to pass on, they do. And I've seen incredible moments in my own life where people have waited. I remember my grandmother literally waited until I carried my grandfather to her bedside. They were married for 65 years so that he could say goodbye and read the Torah for her and pray for her. The second I left the hospital, she passed away. I believe that we wait and that we know and that our
Yeah.
bodies know.
Yeah.
And the second that we left the hospital, she passed away, and there was a double rainbow right out front. And I knew, and before I even got the phone call, I knew.
You knew.
And I think that stuff happens every day. It's the
Yes.
miracle of life.
And I think, the other thing to remember that I see, and you've probably seen far more, is that people's missions, continue all the way to that last breath. So it sounds like even with your grandmother, we're still seeing things happen here that would not happen had Maria's mom not be in these days, these moments. And I feel like they're still serving purpose all the way to the end. And I think Maria now is in that, we feel that middle, mom's in that middle place, and Maria's even hearing her speak to her in ways she didn't hear before. And I know, like, for me, like my father, I agree everything with what you're saying. I hear him all the time.
I'm so sorry that you guys are going through that. It doesn't make it, nothing that I'm going to say is going to make it any easier or painful, because we love the people
No,
that we lose.
it actually does, because it's part of life. And sometimes when you really know they're going somewhere better, and that they're going to be with you, and that all of this is very brief and we'll all be together again, it helps.
Yeah.
It really does.
I like to think of it, Abdul-Baha talks about this life and in context of the journey of the soul, right? If you think about the life of the soul that's created, in this life, he uses the analogy of a bird flying through a bird cage with one end open, with both ends open. So if this moral life is the bird cage, the soul is the bird flying through the bird cage. And the time that bird is in that bird cage, that millisecond is this life.
This life.
It's this much on our actual spiritual really development and journey of our souls. But there's a lot of work that we have to do here that sets up the rest. It's the spiritual gym.
I feel like, and Justin, back to your book, I feel like you're doing the work, and I think from you and the generation below you are going to be doing more work. And I think the next generation it's going to have to, because I think everything's just kind of gone too fast and gotten so chaotic. But I think it's wonderful. What triggered you to do the book, Man Enough, to really look at this and say, wait, there's more going on here to being a guy, my guy experience, and I want to share? Because even when I read about the 10-year-old you and the older you and whatever, I'm like, oh, I know that guy. I knew every one of you because I've experienced it. But what was the moment where you said, you know what, I want to, there's something a little messed up about how we see masculinity, and I want to take a look at that?
I get asked that question a lot. I don't think there was one moment. I think it was kind of an amalgamation of a lot of moments, a lot of bee stings, if you will, a lot of moments where I was challenged by specifically women in my life who had held a mirror to me and shown me behavior that was hurtful. Moments where I was hurting myself. Moments that all of us experience as men, where we get into a situation and suddenly we say something or act totally different. We have no idea why we're saying it or doing it, right? When we puff up our chests and we say something, or we.
I think every 3 hours of my life.
Yeah, right. There's
literally,
and you can be in a conversation, and words can be escaping your mouth, and your thought pattern at the same time is like, why am I saying this?
Yes.
Who am I? I'm not in control of my body. And and that's masculinity. That's this need to be seen as X enough, as this need to be wanted, this need to be a part of the club that doesn't really exist. And I'm only here, honestly, because of the grace and the patience of the women in my life who have loved me enough to give me feedback. And thank God I've been willing to take it and look at it. And what I've discovered on my journey is that the bar is set so low for us men.
So low.
That you can crawl over it. And part of why I wrote the book was I started getting a lot of praise and attention for saying very basic human things. There's something radical in my TED Talk. You know what's radical? I'm a straight, white, cisgender dude who is an athlete, who looks the way that he looks. And I'm talking about things that aren't normally talked about by the guys that look like me. I'm challenging a system that benefits me. That's the only thing radical about it. And maybe that is radical. to a certain extent. But the things that I'm saying are very basic. It's human behavior, right? And yet, there's so few of us men that are saying it and willing to challenge it. It becomes a radical thing. Yeah. That's how low the bar is. And so that's one of the reasons why I decided to write the book. Honestly, I've been terrified to write the book. It's been scary. And the only way I could figure out how to write the book is by bringing myself down and humanizing myself, taking myself off of this bullshit pedestal. Pedestals, I hate pedestals. They don't exist. All pedestals do is make somebody want to tear you off of them anyway.
Yeah, knock you down.
And showing I'm a mess. Here's how I'm a mess. And guess what? A lot of the reasons why I've made mistakes in my life, how I've hurt myself and other people, is not because of me, not because I'm a bad person, but because of how I've been socialized. And that's the conversation.
And how you've been socialized. You know, I there's a couple of things. I'm writing these things down because the pedestal thing, but also how you've been socialized. And going back, I don't think...
Okay, I'll send you the podcast after it's done.
Well, you know, I have to do this because I won't absorb it if I don't. Mm-hmm. I write down, so you're going to see me writing a lot during this, but these are like such valuable notes, and I'm hoping a lot of our fans, this is what they do. They they listen to this with a notebook. But I was going to say
that's a brilliant way to learn.
Right. A lot of people need, right.
A lot of people need auditory.
I have to have it, or I will not. And I have to do it a couple of times. But I was going to say, you know, I grew up in a time where, thank God I had a dad who at least said, date everybody, every race, color, religion, like whatever. Like that's the best way to get to know yourself, and it's more fun that way. Don't like just date someone who's exactly who you are. But other than that, there was, if I ever have a son, I think I would like to tell him more about that part of it. You know, more about you know, the responsibility and empathy that's needed, and, you know, keeping ego out of it. And because I think, like you were saying, that younger self in you was, I won't put words in your mouth. I know for me, it became ego. It became like, you know, being able to pick up this one or get that one. And it was, like you said, the bar was so low. No one was calling you out for it. You know, it was like everyone.
Especially other men.
Oh, yeah, no. And I think it's really important that we educate the next generation coming up that, you know, that's not really cool. And it's not going to feel good later in life if you evolve.
Yeah. And no one challenges you. Especially the men.
No.
And, you know, and that's one of the reasons why I wrote this book, if not one of the main reasons, is I also wrote it for myself. You know, I wrote this book for myself. And as you talked about earlier, you know, you talked about, you know, writing it for that, you know, the 6-year-old and the 8-year-old and the 12-year-old and all of the versions of yourself that I talk about that you see, that you've been.
Yes.
I never had this book. I never had somebody break this down. I never had somebody share their pain and their stories and the stuff that happened to them to educate me, to prepare me. Because that's not how masculinity works. We're not allowed to share those things. We completely lost that rite of passage. But what if the rite of passage was men being vulnerable with each other and sharing their traumas and their stories to prepare boys for what's to come, to say, don't do this. This happened to me. This is what it looks like. If it's okay, because you mentioned this earlier. I want to just read this real quick, if it's okay.
Please. Please.
Little chapter. So why this book? This is from the preface. Because I need this book. I needed this book as the 10-year-old boy who was shown porn for the first time, long before his body or mind was ready for it.
Oof.
Likely paving new neural pathways, linking images of naked women to happiness and false feelings of self-worth. Images that he would later use to attempt to fill voids in his life. Voids that, when he was not aroused in the moment of using porn, would be replaced by shame. I needed this book as the 18-year-old freshman in college who felt the need to prove his masculinity by hooking up with as many girls as he could without any regard for their feelings or attachments in the process. And as the 22-year-old who didn't know how to say he wasn't emotionally ready to have sex for the first time. And as the 25-year-old man who was heartbroken and so financially broke that even if he could have afforded to eat for that month after he learned he was cheated on, he wouldn't have. And I needed it as the 29-year-old who had finally found the love of his life, staged one of the most elaborate proposals of all time, and then also found himself having cold feet for no other reason than what society was telling him would happen to him once he got married. And I go on and on and on up until me now, who's 37. And that's what it's about, man.
And I think all of that is so relatable to men. And I love your generation is much more open to hearing it, because I think like a book like this 20 years ago, you would remark like, who's this Fruit Loop? Like, you know what I mean?
I'm still, that's still, come on, that's still going to happen. We know there's a good part of the population that's going to look at this and be like, oh, look at this liberal Fruit Loop. And I'm like, actually, no.
Yeah, no, you don't sound like that at all. You sound actually very centered to me. But I think that it's the beginning of the discussion. It has to start somewhere. And it finally is starting. I also think so that's the bad part that, we do to others. And then there's the part, I think, of ourselves too, where, we feel that need, like you said, to puff up the chest, right? Yeah. And put on the armor and go like, kick ass. And that's hard. And my wife will tell me that too, because I'll explain to her like about, being a boy, and, you come up in a family and they say, hey, you got to go out and fight. And if you like lose a fight, you're not tough. It's a really bad thing. And so I always see when Marie hears it from other parents, whatever, she goes, wow, it really is hard growing up as a boy in that way.
Well, just think about that for a second. If you lose a fight, you're not a man. But there's always going to be somebody who loses the fight.
Right.
So what does that mean for 50%?
Miyagi always said, someone's always tougher.
Someone's always tougher. Someone's going to be tougher, smarter, better looking, more confident, have more money, have a bigger penis. There's always going to be somebody or something bigger. And if we're as men constantly comparing ourselves to that, how will we ever be happy? We know that comparison is the thief of joy. But what does that actually look like as men?
What
exists everywhere.
What does that look like?
That's why we're joyless.
And you know what? I think that here's where the joylessness is kind of masked, because you put it more into the fight. All right, I'll just make more money. I'll kick more ass. I'll make another project. I'll do that. And then it's like, it's anesthetized. Maybe there's some kind of blowout party or some release. You buy a new car, whatever it is, right? But then it's back to that. And I know it's funny. We know the same people too that are still engaged. I call it like 20th century thinking, but I think the pandemic is shaken a lot of it. But I know a lot of men still stuck in that. And when I see them, I can see how angry and upset. They're not happy people. And I almost want to say, let go. You did it. It's over. Like, you don't have to keep going out and kicking ass.
We don't know how to stop.
Yeah.
Because it's an illusion. It's a tunnel that leads to nowhere. It's a bridge that leads to nowhere. It's a mountain that's impossible to climb. You'll never get to the top. So all we're doing is chasing happiness, and our enoughness is reliant on external forces, external validation about someone else or something telling us that if we acquire enough, or if we get enough, if we marry up enough, if we whatever enough, then we're enough. And that is why we're so depressed. Because as you know, and look, you've had a lot of success, and I'm very blessed to have a lot of success. The more you acquire, the less happy you actually are. And that's proven.
Yeah.
That's proven. I love. Didn't Jim Carrey say that he wishes everybody could experience fame,
right? So
that they could learn and realize that fame is not the answer.
Yeah, and he kind of gets cynics can I hear just joke writers whatever just have so much fun at his expense, and I'm like, you don't get him. That guy is on the journey, and he sees it. He's highly sensitive, intuitive, which is why he's a great mimic, and I feel like he gets it. I understand what I always when I see him, I get it. I have never talked to him, but
Jim Carrey is brilliant. I stay away from the political parts of his conversations, but he has a lot to say and a lot of introspection that if we just
ignore most people's political conversations.
I try.
Well, you know what it is?
I try.
Because it's the same kind of empathy that you conjure in this book, Man Enough. You have to have the same empathy for that generation and for the other people, because they're scared, and they're freaked out. And it's funny. I've said with this whole pandemic that if you are skipping through this and whistling and having a good time, there's something off with you. I think everybody has
taken. You're missing the empathy, Gene, if that's the case.
Yeah, and so I said that if you're having a hard time right now, I get it. Because of everything going on. It's funny, again, another mutual friend of ours who I won't mention, Maria was texting with him, it's A-list star, and about another star who is tweeting out insanity. And Maria's star friend said, if only we finally have an antidote, a vaccine for Corona, if only we had one for the mental health issues that have come of isolation, and seeing how. So anyway, I take now whatever anyone's tweeting or putting out, I take with a grain of salt because, man, I think a lot of people are hurting. A lot of people are freaked out. And I think if they could, again, read this book and subscribe to what you're saying and the other healers are saying, which is to kind of realize most of it's an illusion anyway, to take that pause, to look inward at yourself, microtransactions of who's around you. Anyway, so we digress.
You're a really thoughtful, eloquent man.
Oh, well. Justin, you're amazing. You know what it is, Justin, doing this show?
Who's this other voice, by the way? I want to hear this other voice.
Kelsey. Well, Kelsey's the
hi.
So you didn't meet Kelsey?
No, I didn't pre with that. Mm-mm.
So Kelsey's a very bright light, as you can see.
Justin, I met you at Whole Foods a couple years ago. I was just telling Kev. I said, listen, Kev, I saw Justin at Whole Foods in West Hollywood a couple years ago.
I can't see you, Kelsey. I'm only seeing this handsome man. There's only one camera.
Let me switch.
Oh, hi.
Hi.
Kelsey.
Hi.
Kelsey met you at Whole Foods.
So we're besties.
As we digress.
Yeah, I told Kev that. I said, listen, Justin and I go way back. He smiled at me at Whole Foods. I smiled at him a couple years ago. We had a moment.
Did we actually meet or did we just engage in a smile?
We definitely were just in line together. And I was like, oh, I'm not going to bug him, but I am going to smile. And then you smiled back and it was very nice. And I was like...
Oh my God, I'm so happy. Sometimes I have these fears where it's like, oh my God, if I ever am having a bad day, then I'm going to ruin somebody's
right.
Yeah.
And it's a real thing because also when you go out in public and when you become, I don't know, whatever the hell we're called, public figures in some way. And I always joke that I'm like a C or D list. I can't even imagine the pressure of being an A list. Like if you're having a bad day and maybe I didn't smile at you, you would think I was an asshole.
No, I know.
Yeah.
It's so hard. I'm so happy that I smiled at you that day. So it makes me feel better.
Yeah, you did. So,
it's funny. Deepak Chopra, I was saying by doing this show every day, it's really enlightened me. That's why I was so excited to do this episode because I learned so much. And like Deepak Chopra, one of the things he was saying is that, he's like, we're many roles in life, but we're not any one role. And he also talked about the fact that, he can't always be on. Can't always be Deepak. Yeah, there's days where he's in a bad mood or but it doesn't mean that that's who he is, that he's a phony on camera and a jerk off.
Yeah. And then we also have to, as folks in public, then detach and not let the court of public opinion dictate our own happiness also. And that's something that I, as a people pleaser, right, as somebody who grew up wanting to be liked, that's something that I struggle and I wrestle with, right? So in the event that I'll put so much pressure on myself.
Yeah, me too, Justin. But Justin, how do you deal with that?
Understand the power.
How do you deal with that though? Because I know that feeling of being a people pleaser and like wanting to come through for everybody. And then if you're a celebrity, and especially with this book, a lot of people are going to reach out, help me with this, help me with that. How do you come to terms with that? Because I think that's everybody out there well, at least our group of people that, listen, we call them the Heal Squad. We're kind of all the flight attendants and the people pleasers of the world. So how do you deal with that?
I learn from other people. I did literally just a few minutes ago, I'm not going to say her name, but a massive influential author who's a friend of mine. I was reaching out to some author friends and asked to, do Instagram Live. And this person has been taking a digital detox and just said, I can't right now for my own health. And I'm so proud of you and I'm supportive of you, blah, blah. And I look at that and I admire it so much. I don't care about the Instagram Live. I'm obviously we're trying to combine audiences so that more people than mine listen or read the book.
Right.
But what I cared more about in that moment was like, oh, this is an example of how somebody is taking care of their mental health. This is an example of how somebody's setting positive boundaries so that they protect themselves and their families. And so I'm just constantly learning, because then I want to take that myself and figure out, well, how do I make sure that I'm also honoring myself when I get, tens or hundreds of folks reaching out for me for the same thing? Because the one thing we know, back to the first conversation that we had, is that the most valuable thing in our entire lives is our time. The most valuable thing that we have, the most finite resource, the most precious gemstone, it's time. So how are we spending it? Who are we giving it to? What are we doing with it? That's what matters more than anything. So what am I giving my time to? And maybe, I'm sure Deepak and meditative, gurus and folks talk about what are we giving our attention to? Well, what are we giving our time to? So are we giving our time to social media, to Instagram, to people pleasing, to worrying, to all of these things? I mean, we could go on and on and on about what we give our time and our energy to, but if you distill it down to time, I don't have the time to do everything that I need to do and worry about if I'm pleasing everybody else. That is a recipe for depression and anxiety, and it will paralyze you. I've seen it paralyze so many people that I love.
Yeah.
Because here we are, I kind of joke that God gave us this, he gave us this gift. And also it's such a mean joke, the gift of time. It feels slow and goes fast. It's like as a parent, right? They say that the days are slow, but the years are fast. And here we are, God's like, all right, we know, you're going to die one day. So what are you going to do with the time I'm giving you? Right? And if you want to go even deeper, one of my Muslim brothers reminded me, that we have to make time for the creator of time. How about that? We don't have time to pray. We don't have time to go to church. We don't have time to do all these things. We don't have time to be of service. We're so focused on our own selves. We don't make time for the creator of time. But we got to also really be mindful of what we're giving our time to. So going back to your question, how do I balance it? I'm learning from other people. We're in uncharted territory in 2021 with social media and instant communication and on-demand gratification for anything and everything. From food deliveries to dating to, I could have a subscription for anything now. I don't even have to leave my house. I could have all the luxuries in the world delivered to me, for God's sakes. So what are we spending our time on? It's going to be the big question, I think, for all of us. And for me, I want to be spending my time on things that are of service, but also not of service to the world, of service to my family, service to myself.
To yourself, right? So, Justin, do you actually look at your physical day and say, these many hours to this, these many hours to that, or whatever your tasks are? No. Do you look at the tasks and say,
because that's not how my brain works.
Okay.
I wish it was. I actually know a lot of men. It tends to be a fairly celebrated masculine quality to be like regimented and scheduled in their days. Like wake up at 4 a.m. Do this by 4:15. Do this by 4:30. You know, it's like you have the Tim Ferrisses of the world and these types of guys who do that. I'm a ADD creative thinker, right? I actually don't function well that way. It's very hard for me. Even getting to the point where I can make a list is hard for me because I get so distracted with so many other things. So really for me, it's about finding my center. So as an example, in the Baha'i faith, we're told to wake up in the morning, start our days a certain way. We start our days with reading the writings and a prayer or praying.
So what is your day?
You're giving and you're taking as an example. You're asking God for something and also you're taking in. And that's a center, that's a grounding. And so whatever your faith is, whatever your religion is, whatever your belief is, you can do the same thing. You can meditate, you can pray, you can read something that inspires you. And that's kind of a grounding thing. And then throughout the day, there's one moment in the day where as Baha'is, we're asked to pray. As an example, Muslims pray 5 times. And as a Baha'i, we're just asked to pray at one moment in the day. It's a tether. It's a grounding back to why. And, one of the Arabic words for human is insan, which is translated to they who forget. So literally one of the oldest written languages. Human beings are insane because we forget. We forget everything. So the purpose of God, the purpose of religion is to help us remember our worth, our value, right? That's what prayer is for. That's what all of this stuff exists for, to help us remember that we're spiritual beings having a physical experience. That all of this stuff is an illusion, right? We're thirsty in the desert, and all of these material things around us are just an illusion. They're not real, but we drench ourselves in them. We bathe in them, right?
Yeah.
And so it's about remembering. And so my days, at the end of the day, I always try to go back to like, okay, how am I being of service? Is this about me? What's and in the book I talk about the why ladder. So let me just
tell me about that, please. Yeah, the why ladder.
Take it down to a practical thing. And I want to be clear that I'm not asking anybody to become obsessed with this why ladder, because you can take it too far. But the why ladder is a series of whys. Why am I doing this? Okay. Well, why? And well, why? And if you ever have been in the car with your children and they ask you why, and then they ask you why again, after the third why, you don't have an answer. Right. Because it doesn't, you're like, because God created cells and it's like, why? If you can reduce it down even with two whys, you'll generally get to the core. And I put the why ladder in the body image chapter because I talk about my muscle dysphoria and dysmorphia and some of my body image issues, and just the reason for why one would want to diet or why one would want to go work out, and how you can take the same approach, but one's healthy and one's not. You know, as an example, I might want to go work out, but if I'm doing it because I feel less than, and I'm expecting the workout to make me feel enough, then it's never going to work. It'll never work, because no matter how big I get, no matter how big my muscles are, how strong I am, I'll always be trying to fill a void. Right. But if I go and I am aware of it, I'm like, oh my God, I'm not feeling enough. Why? Why am I feeling insecure? Oh, because I just saw I was following that guy that looks amazing on Instagram, and he was doing this workout, and I feel like shit, and I just want to make myself feel better. Well, at the very least, you can then go one level deeper. Why? And whatever that answer is, you can still go work out, but at least go work out knowing why. And at the same time, you can convince yourself and remind yourself that, like, well, actually working out makes me feel connected to my body. And when I feel connected to my body, I'm in my joy. Or working out, I want to work out because I'm 37 and like my back hurts and I want to have more energy. Yeah. I want to be able to throw my son up in the air without tearing a rotator cuff.
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you, someone is like who's almost 20 years older than you. What is a great motivation is, I know you love to direct and you want to be a filmmaker. Well, It takes a lot of youth and energy. You see a guy like Stallone and you feel like you're talking to a 48-year-old guy. He's got such passion. He's got, you know what I mean? And he talks about whatever film he's working on, it's like his first film. But then I see, a lot of other guys who unfortunately are tired old men and they don't have it. And I can see you're such a passionate young man that the working out is going to extend all of the dreams you want to do. And by the way, the quality time with your children, you'll be able to play sports with them or be active with them. So,
but let's think about that for 1 second.
Yeah.
Let's say I want to work out because I'm feeling insecure and I want to be ripped and have big muscles.
Yeah.
Versus what you just said.
Yeah.
Which is, I want to work out because I want to extend my life and have energy.
Yeah.
And at 70 years old, be able to move freely without pain. Well, those workouts look different. And that's what we don't realize.
Yeah.
And let's use the gym as a metaphor. The way that I approach the gym to fill a void in my insecurity is going to be completely different than the way I approach the gym if I'm thinking about holistic well-being, energy, and movement. Because that will be about building a foundation, about a little more flexibility and stretching. It'll be about, working out the muscles that nobody sees, versus the other one, which is going to lead to injury oftentimes. Yep. Which is about overloading and taxing a muscle. And that doesn't actually lead to long-term growth. Why do you think that? Let's look at Stallone. Right. This is a guy who built a career around his body.
Right.
and also probably takes things like HGH.
Yeah,
and stuff
he's
like
very
that
open about that. Yeah.
And a lot of these guys have had multiple surgeries.
Yes,
Why? Because
the
they've
shoulders,
abused
the
their
knees,
bodies.
the hips.
I abused my bodies. I have more torn muscles and ligaments and strains in my body than most guys in their 50s, and I'm 37. Why? Because I was working out to fill the void, to look good in a shirt, to look good when my shirt was off. I wasn't working out thinking to myself that at 37, I'm going to have a 5.5-year-old and I want to be able to run without pulling my hamstring.
Right.
I would have been doing the things that weren't sexy. I would have been doing, plyometrics and mobility drills and yoga, right? I would have been doing more meditation before and breath work before my workouts to get my body warmed up. I wouldn't have jumped right into like doing 225 on the bench or overloading squats, right?
Yep.
I would have never done that. So it's understanding the why.
This why ladder,
and then adjusting.
I think this why ladder is brilliant for everybody because how often do we ask why? By the way,
well, as men, we're not trained to. As men, we're told not to. You don't ask.
Yeah. But I also think I don't think women, I think men do it less than women. I know a lot of women. I just feel like so many of us, we just get up, we try our best, Justin, we get tired, we drink a lot of coffee, and then it's like we put bad food in our system, and then there's drugs, and then to feel better, it's alcohol, and it's bad relations, and like we just watch more 90 Day Fiance, and like, but I get it when I see people like, they're not taking that time, they're not taking the thoughtfulness you're saying when you wake up in the morning to have your prayer, which I love, or your meditation, but asking the why. Why am I going in the gym? Or why am I on YouTube all day? You know what I mean?
Am I scrolling on Instagram all day? Is this serving me? Why am I on dating apps all day long? Why am I gambling? Why am I looking at porn?
Right.
What is the root cause? And if you even look at cognitive behavioral therapy, it always stems from like changing behavior and having to figure out the why behind it anyways. Like, why am I doing this stuff? Why am I interrupting my wife? We just got to we got to be willing to ask why and then have conversation around it with ourselves and with others. It's really that simple. The conversation just has to start. We have to be willing to look at the behavior. And if we're not even willing to look at the behavior, then we can't fix it. And that's really a core, kind of bringing it back to the book and what we're trying to talk about in masculinity. It's about acknowledging. It's about asking why. Why do we puff out our chest and say stupid shit when we're around people? Why do we interrupt the women that we love?
Right.
Why do we not stand up for women when we hear men talking in sexist ways?
Right.
Why do we devalue X group? And these are things that we just have to look at.
Yeah. And I think you're right with men. I know with, how I was raised, it's just like, suck it up, dude. Yeah. Get up and fight. Just get up and do it.
Stop asking questions.
Yeah.
Right? We're told literally to not ask questions. Well, in what world is that okay that you don't ask questions? Where does that serve anything or anybody? We must ask questions. As human beings, we're born into this world and we are designed to seek answers. So by telling ourselves to stop asking questions, we are denying the very thing that makes us human, which is we're on the quest for truth. Otherwise, there would be no religion. We wouldn't have religions. We wouldn't have self-help books and gurus and people. Everybody's asking the same question. Why are we here? Why are we alive? What's the meaning of life? But yet we tell ourselves and our boys to stop asking questions.
Stop, just work harder, get more, and then
like
and it's a cycle. Just work harder to have more, to work harder to have more. And then the kids end up spoiled anyway. They didn't get the real quality attention. Yeah, it's an ugly cycle. I think you really have me on this. Stop and ask why. And it's taking those pauses. And then the other thing is, like you said, is really asking like what serves, right? But serves other people, obviously, but then what serves you? I don't think people ask that, or does this serve me? You know what I'm saying? Yeah. Like I'm just right now starting to ask myself, Justin, like what serves me? Like why did I just get an incredible high off this conversation with this person? And then why with this other person do I just want to tear my body apart? But I would never have asked before, even up to months ago, I would never have asked that question.
I'm really happy that that you're feeling that. And I even think you can, you could even bring it back to, bring that back to the gym. and I don't want to keep hitting the gym metaphor, but it's not even about self-love. It's just about self-awareness, right? It's very hard. Self-love is a really hard thing to figure out and put into practice.
Yep.
Oh, love yourself. What the hell does that even mean?
I love that you're saying this. We just had this conversation.
How to do that?
Yeah.
Kelsey and I just had this conversation this morning. She's like, Kevin, you know, I want self-love. I go, no one has. Who really has self-love? I know people in love with themselves.
Right.
I know that, especially in Hollywood.
They think they're in love with themselves.
Exactly.
In the reality, they're empty. They're feeling empty.
100%. Yeah.
But
self-awareness
is such a. It's like this. Self-love is such an impossible thing, and it unfortunately puts a lot of pressure on people. And it's like, and you get lost. Self-love becomes ego a lot because nobody knows how to do it. It's like self-love is like, oh no, you know. It becomes this whole hippy dippy thing. I don't know how to self-love. I know how to be self-aware. I know how to be let's be compassionate to ourselves. Like that. Self-compassion, self-empathy, self-forgiveness. Those things maybe can lead to self-love, but that self-awareness of like what makes me feel good. Well, that's a great thing to ask. And if the answer is going to the gym, then boom, go to the gym. Right? It doesn't mean like, oh, how do I love myself today? I want to go to the gym. No, it's like, well, what makes me feel good? What would make me feel good right now? Reading a book, not looking at my phone, going on a hike. Okay, well, can I find the time to do that? Maybe not today in my schedule, but can I find the time tomorrow or next week? Can I make a date with myself? It'd be anything, but that stems from awareness. That stems from like self-awareness and just being willing to ask ourselves why. What makes me think
why? Yeah, and I think also even let me just add like a slight footnote. It's after why, maybe asking how. For example, so let's say I do the YouTube rabbit hole, which I do all the time. Then I want to ask myself, how do I feel after this? Do I feel satisfied watching 3 hours of old Hawaii Five-0 episodes, clips from Star Trek, and let's say, old wrestling videos from like the 1980s? Like afterwards, do I really feel, I'm like, I kind of feel a little bit of a hangover. I feel kind of like I'm a little ashamed that I could have done something constructive in that time. And I don't think, and again, I think there's healthy releases too. So I think,
and that's where we can get too critical. So there's two ways there's a fork in the road there. So you could go why again, and you could find that you're watching those 3 hours of YouTube because you're overworked. You're maybe feeling a lot of pressure. Maybe you're feeling stressed and tired. Maybe you're depressed. Maybe you got in a fight with Maria, who knows? And you're like, I just want an outlet. So really, what you're doing is self-medicating.
You just give me all of the above, except the fight with Maria, but all the other stuff,
So right, and so you ask yourself why again, and you get more to the root of it, and then you can become aware of it, and then if you go why even deeper, well, why am I overworked? Why am I working too hard? Well, maybe I'm using work to fill a different void.
Yeah.
What do I need to make more money? Is this serving me? The how is also really important, the how you feel. And I love that footnote. But I think that the how is tied back to that second why. Right? Because
the high brings you back to the second why.
Yeah, the why brings you back to the how. Because the how, sorry, I know we're confusing people.
Yeah.
How you're feeling right now after watching 3 hours of YouTube is probably similar to how you're feeling underneath why you're working so hard.
Yes.
Like it's all kind of tied back together. And it's the same thing that, I struggled with when I'm like pulled to pornography. Right? I'm like, why do I want to go do that? Well, why? Because when I was 10 and 11 and 12 years old, before my body was even changing, I was introduced to porn. And when I was the loneliest in my life and when I was bullied and I had no friends, that was my friend. So as a 36-year-old man who has external forces and is feeling similar feelings, whether it's bullied or alone or not, like I'm not enough or I'm working too hard, whatever it is, the brain doesn't discriminate. I just go right back to having the same feelings I had when I was 12 years old. And my brain goes, oh, this will help you. But if I don't ask myself why, I'll never get to the bottom of it. And how that makes me feel is super important. I know that at the end of that, I'm going to feel shame and I'm going to feel depression. I'm going to feel awful.
Yeah.
And I'm going to feel like there's something wrong with me. I'm going to feel dirty. So why am I doing it? Well, that's not going to stop me from not doing it again. Going to the why is going to stop me. Going to why it's happening. Going to the root cause of what are those feelings underneath it, and then changing that behavior is going to be the thing that helps me in the end. So again, all of these things lead us to the same place. All roads, in essence, lead us to Rome, but it requires us being willing to be self-aware and to ask really uncomfortable questions and to be confronted with uncomfortable answers and not be defensive or deflective about it. We can't have egos when we're doing that internal self-work. That's why in the book I call it the hard work of heart work.
The hard work of heart work. Wow. I think there's so
going deep today together.
Yeah, well, you know
together.
what? Yeah, but listen, there's so much amazing takeaway. But I tell you, to me, it's like for guys, 100%. But I think for women as well. I mean, right, Kelsey? Wouldn't you agree?
Oh, for sure. When I like Justin, you talk about in the book too. It's like for women, something they can really take away is like being more empathy for the men in their lives. And I think that that's really important because it's like we also see you guys from these like societal norms that have been put up, right? Mm. So it's like, oh,
and we're your oppressor.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. It's like, well, Kev just gets like mad and pufferfishy, so whatever, like, you know, whatever. But it's like, no, Kev's hurting. And so it's like when we're also aware of that, I think that that's such a beautiful thing. And that can foster those conversations and those relationships and just like those deeper things.
Well, I think that what we don't think about is that women and men, all of us, are brought up in the same culture, the same patriarchal system.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So we're suffering in the exact same ways. You know, my good friend Liz Plank wrote a book called For the Love of Men, and she oftentimes talks about how her liberation is tied to mine. She can't be set free unless I set myself free. And I think that's really, really important for us as men to realize, and for women. And so when I talk about having empathy for men, it's not saying, oh, women, you have to deal with oppression and you must have empathy for us. That's not what I'm trying to say. What I'm trying to say is that, and as Bell Hooks talks about in A Will to Change, women also suffer from their own internal misogyny, which is an outcome from being raised in a patriarchal culture.
Yeah.
Right. And it's that thing, right? And a lot of really sensitive, good, woke women have been or dated woke men, right? And been disgusted by them. Glennon Doyle talks about this in Untamed, right? How there are so many women who want men to be emotional and vulnerable, yet when they finally meet one and are confronted with a man being vulnerable, their first reaction is disgust. Because they've been raised in a system that teaches men that they're not allowed to cry and teaches women that when a man cries, he's weak and not a good partner.
Right.
So we all have shit to unlearn here.
Yes, we do.
All of us do. But my work is really with men. And my hope is that through seeing with my eyes, women can also have some extra empathy for the men in their lives.
Well, and I think too, something I just wanted to note on, because you said it at the beginning, and Kev, I was mentioning this to you the other day. My roommate and I always joke where it's like, if we have friends who it's like, oh, what do you look for in a guy? We're like, yeah, the bar is on the floor, you guys. The bar's on the floor.
Yeah, you can crawl over it.
Yeah. And it's like, that's not funny. We laugh about it, but it's not funny. So when you said that at the beginning, that like really struck me. I was like, ooh, yeah. I mean, but that's something we all collectively need to work on.
I think.
Yeah. And yeah, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, like, I think that, you know, for people in relationships, and I've been in one for a long time, and thank goodness I had a mom that was a very independent, strong woman, and a dad who was very macho, but yet changed diapers and made lunches and did, you know, so I grew up in a system that was different for the time. And I know in our relationship, I go back to the word you just said, your partner. Marie and I always felt like we were a partnership. So Marie was out, you know, earning. And there was a period of time where she was the big breadwinner. And I would always say, team sports, go with the hot hand. You know what I mean? So I did everything else, which was take care of mom and dad, take care of the dogs, grocery shopping, cleaning, laundry, from the time we were in an apartment to on and on and on. And that always worked for us. I still don't have a problem with it. With doing it. And then I would joke with Marie and say, hey, you know, as long as you're willing to go the other way, if I become the primary breadwinner, and she's like, I am, but I really don't want that to happen. So I'll just keep working and you can keep doing your thing. And it's really worked for us. But we never had those norms. It was never, and if we have children, if we're blessed enough, hopefully this year, it's never going to be about who's going to do the diapers, the bottles, the feet. It will never be like that for us. And I think that's really helped us, is knowing that we're a team, we're a partnership, and, whoever just has to do the work for the partnership on one end and who's doing the work on the other. And that's what's always worked for us.
Yeah.
Well, what you're describing is equality in practice and in a household. And it's really important because you can have the conversation, right? Because most people don't have the conversation ever. They just assume gender roles. And having that conversation is so important. And it's going to look different for every family.
Right.
But being man enough to not have your worth affected by your wife being the breadwinner is really important.
Right.
Right. Because the winds of success can change for everybody. And studies have shown that men are happier when they're providing at an equal rate with women.
Yeah.
Like, we're happier when women are also adding to the income level of the household.
Yeah.
Right. But we've been taught this idea that no, women, we have to make sure that our women don't have to do anything. But that's all bullshit. Who decided that? We're not like 1950s Mad Men.
Yeah.
Like, that's not where we're like, but even then, who decided these things? Somebody did. I always tell the story. A dear friend of mine and a former mentor of mine, and I haven't seen him in a while because he moved, but deeply affected my life. His name's Oscar. And he told me the story of the way that we learn things as humans and take these things that we learn that are passed down as truths that have been written in stone. And there's a reason why we do them. And he talked about his Thanksgiving dinners growing up. And Oscar's he's a Black man, born in LA, also a Baha'i. And he's like a wise sage. And he was talking about his Thanksgivings every year. They did ham. They didn't do turkey, they did ham. And his grandmother would always cut the ham in half and do one first and then the other. And it was just this tradition. And they did it for years. We're talking about like 30, 40 years. And then his mom started doing it. And then he started doing it. And nobody ever asked why. It was just, this is the way that we make ham. This is the way to do it on Thanksgiving. This is the tradition of our family. And the ham tasted amazing and it was perfect and it was always the best and everyone looked forward to this ham, but this is how you made it in the family. And then one day, he's like, hey, Grandma, why do you cut the ham in half? Why do you do it this way? And the mom didn't know. And the grandma's like, oh, honey, it's because the oven wasn't big enough. The oven,
Oh my God.
back 60 years ago, wasn't big enough for the whole ham, so they cut it in half and they cooked it. And that became the tradition.
That just became, the unquestioned tradition.
This is the thing. Nobody asked why for 40, 50 years.
No one asked why.
And if we just were to ask why do we have gender roles? Why is it not okay for the man to do laundry? What is it in us men that thinks that it's work and a chore if we have to do the dishes? What's the thing that is in us that expects women to do these things? What is that about? Where does it come from? And in reality, you're going to find that it doesn't come from anywhere. It's just all bullshit tradition. And sure, maybe, during intense times in our past, there were the male jobs were much more laborious, and sure, you can go back and look at history and sociology and all of this kind of stuff, and I'm sure there's reasons for everything at one point in time.
Sure,
but that's not where we are today.
No, and we have to progress as people, or we wouldn't be where we are today. You guys, the book is Man Enough. Justin Baldoni, this will not be our last conversation on air, please, because we have so much more we have to go over. I know you have a stacked day. You guys, this is an amazing book for men and women, I'm telling you. And I think, ending it today, it's like, for me, the takeaway is the why, the practice of the why of all the great lessons. It's why do we do these things? And anyway, so Justin, continue success. I see with you, I think for you that your challenge is going to be managing the greatest gift, as you said, of time, because you've got more books in you and more in self-help, but then also I know you're a great storyteller and actor. So your challenge in the next, say, 40 or 50 years is going to be how to balance that. And of course, be an amazing dad and partner too. So, but that's okay.
Yeah,
that's a
cool
high-class
joke,
problem.
right?
Yeah, exactly.
It's a high-class problem.
High-class
and you know
problem.
It's going to have to come with us making choices.
Yeah.
And me understanding, as someone once told me, that I can do it all, but not all at once.
Yeah. Amen. On that note, you guys, thank you so much for tuning in.
All right, you guys, Kevin had to run, so you are stuck with me and Winnie. But what an amazing conversation. Justin, I liked him before and I like him even more now. Really, seriously, go get a copy of this book. Give it to every man in your life. We were just joking about that. I will be doing that. And stay tuned for Regular Guy Friday tomorrow. Oh, and you know what? Also, not only get them a copy of this book, but send all the men in your life this episode, because I just think it's really important. So many good lessons and so much great takeaway in there. So thank you guys. We love and appreciate you. And until tomorrow, don't forget, oh, Winnie's already snoring. Be nice people, make good choices, and be present.